Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Shah Weekly. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create macOS menu bar application using UIKit. Now, menu bar application, you may have already seen these kind of application because you can see a lot of different menu bar applications are running, and you may have different applications that you are running on the menu bar. You can click any one of these applications and see different options. What we're going to build is going to be a simple app that is going to communicate with a web service and fetch a random dog fact. So you can see that if I'm going to the dog facts API, that will be right there in your YouTube description. If you go to this URL, it's going to return you one random fact about a dog. So if I just copy this URL, and there we go. In JSON format, we get some result back. If I go ahead and refresh it, I get something else. So that is our application that we will be building, our menu bar application for macOS using UIKit. So when we start our Xcode, we're going to select macOS and we're going to select app. Then comes the name of the app. We can say dog facts. We can say whatever name you want. Make sure that for now, you're going to select storyboard. We will cover SwiftUI a little bit later on in a different video, but right now, select storyboard and save the app to whichever location that you like. All right. Now, since we selected storyboard, our app consists of a storyboard. And there's nothing really wrong with the storyboard. If you want to use storyboard, that's perfectly fine. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to remove the storyboard so I don't have to use storyboard. I'm just going to do everything in code. So I'm just going to go over here and delete the storyboard. Okay, so that is removed. The next thing we want to do is if you go to the actual project, if I click on the actual application, inside the deployment info, you can see the main interface is still set to storyboard. So I'm just going to remove that also. All right. Next, I'm going to jump into app delegate. And inside app delegate, now what we want to do is this will be our starting point of the application. Now, since this is a menu bar application, which is going to mean that it's going to be running somewhere over there in the menu bar, we don't really want it to launch an app and show you the interface. The interface will be adjusted, will be presented from the menu bar itself. So we just want to show the application from the menu bar. All right. So how can we show something in the menu bar? That's the first question. Well, if you start the application, it's going to do with the app delegate, right? One of the problems you will see right now is since you deleted the storyboard, it's not really going to present you with the correct app or an app at all. So what we need to do is to create another file, and we will call this main. This will be just a Swift file. And the reason that we're doing that is that in our storyboard, that had all the different entry points. And now since we have deleted the storyboard, our app doesn't really know that how to hook up to the app delegate, which we need to use. In the main file, I'm going to go ahead and import AppKit. Next, I'm going to create the app using ns application.shared. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create the delegate, which will be the app delegate. This is a file that is already added to your application. You can actually see the app delegate is right there. And the next thing we need to do is we need to set the app delegate to the delegate. And finally, we will go ahead and run the application. So ns application main, and we can pass in the command line argument. So whatever you're passing from the command line, we're not really passing anything. If somebody is passing something, so go ahead and pass those arguments also. So once we do that, your application will know about the app delegate, which is this one. And we need app delegate because inside the app delegate, we will be setting up the code to display your status item. So your menu will appear somewhere over here. And in order to do that, we're going to use something called a status item. So let me go ahead and use private var status item, which will be ns status item. We will initialize the status item inside the application did finish launching. So I'm just going to say status item equals to ns status bar dot system dot status item. And now you can provide some sort of a width length. So we're just going to go ahead and say ns status item dot variable length. All right. So the length will be adjusted depending on what image you're setting to the status item, or what exactly you're setting to the status item. Next, we need to check if the status button is available. So if let status button equals to status item dot button. And a status button are basically all of these things. These are all the different buttons that we have. All right. So if the button is available, we're going to say status button dot image equals to ns image, and we are going to create an image from a symbol. And since we are creating this dog app, I'm just going to use pawprint dot circle, and accessibility is just calling it paw. All right. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay. So now let's go ahead and run the application. Now, if I run the application right now, first of all, I think it's trying to run at least. You will see that it's running it right there at the bottom, doc facts. We don't really want that to happen. That's the first thing. The other thing is that it actually did added our status bar application. You can see the doc paw is appearing over there, and that's the circle icon. That's because I actually use pawprint.circle. So you can use anything over here. I'm just using the San Francisco symbols, and one of the name is pawprint.circle, but you can use anything you want. So we're close. We can definitely see our icon in the menu bar, but we also see our app somewhere over there. You can see doc facts. There's no reason to present your application as in the launcher right over there. I mean, it's a menu bar app, right? So it doesn't have to be in the launcher. So we need to hide that. So let's go ahead and hide it. In order to hide that, we're going to go to the doc facts. We're going to go to info. This is your info.plist file. And we're going to add a key over here. So the key that we're trying to add is application is agent, and we're going to say ls UI element, and we're going to say over here yes. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's go ahead, go back to our app delegate, and let's go ahead and run the application again. Okay, let's quit that first. Okay, so it's still appearing. That's not good. And let's go ahead and run it again. All right, so maybe I misspelled it. Let's go ahead and double check it. Maybe it's not ls something. Maybe it is UI element. And we will set it to yes. Let's go ahead and run it. And now it's not appearing. Okay, so maybe I misspelled it, but here we go. You can definitely see the app is not appearing. The only place where the app is appearing is the menu bar. Okay, so that's good. It's a good start. So what will be the next thing that we want to do? Well, once you have the menu bar that is appearing, there are many different options you can do. You can see that we already have some menu items over here. Now, what happens if I press on any of these items? If I press on this, you can see the menu items I have, right? So you can create these menu items, but we don't really care that much about the menu item. All we want to do is we click on a menu item, on a status item or menu item, and it should just give us the doc facts. That's it. We don't really want any additional menu items, at least not for this app, right? So how are we going to display that? Well, you can use a popover. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a popover, ns popover, And we're going to go ahead and initialize the popover. So self.popover equals to ns_popover, self.popover.content size. This is completely up to you, whatever the content size you are comfortable with. I'm just going to pass in the width, let's say 400, and height 200. But you can adjust this whatever you want. Self.popover.behavior. We're going to go ahead and say transient. This basically means that whenever the user clicks somewhere else, we can go ahead and disable the popover or hide the popover. And the final thing, and basically the most important thing, is who will be responsible for providing the content to the popover. Now, we already have a view controller added, and that view controller was added by default when we created the macOS application. So we're just going to assign that over here, view controller. All right. Now, the other thing we need to do is when you click the status button, the button that appears in the menu bar, we want to fire an event and show the popover. So we can say status button dot button. Oh, sorry, dot action, not button. We already have a button. And we can fire a selector. We can say toggle popover. Okay. Let's go ahead and create this function. We are going to go ahead and say Objective-C, because this is coming from the Objective-C part. And it's a selector. And if let button equals to status item dot button, again, we're going to check the button exists. If popover dot is shown, then we can say self dot popover dot perform the close and don't pass anything. Else we need to show the popover. So popover dot show relative to the button, so button dot bounds, and edges of preferred edge. So we're just going to go ahead, call off button, and preferred edge wherever you want to put it, on the edge of the minimum Y or maximum Y, but you can check it out whichever one you want. We're just going to say minimum Y, which means not the maximum Y. So whatever the bounds it's going to create, it will select the minimum Y, which is in the vertical direction. Okay, so this is done. Let's go ahead and run our app again. You can see our menu bar appearing. And when we click on it, it actually blows up. If we scroll up, you can see that the error that it's trying to throw, it's basically saying could not load the nib name docfax.controller in bundle ns bundle. And the reason it is doing that is by default, it is looking for the view or the nib file when we try to create a view controller, which we are doing right here. But there is no nib file. We actually deleted the storyboard and there are no nib files. So what we need to do is we need to tell macOS that, hey, there is no nib file and you need to load the view. So there is a function called load view, and this can be responsible for creating or loading a view instead of the storyboard, which doesn't exist. So we're going to go ahead and say rect, and I can pass in anything I want over here again. I'm just going to say width will be 400 and height will be 200. So make sure that you have added the load view function so that it can tell our AppKit that, hey, whenever we are creating the view controller, we are using code to create the view and not the storyboard or the nib files. Now let's go ahead and run it again. I'm going to click on that, and there we go. It actually does display really nice control. All right. And if I go ahead and click it again, it basically hides it. All right. Okay. So that's great, but it doesn't really display anything inside. And that's where the view controller is going to come into play. The first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we have some sort of a web service that is fetching the information. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new file. I will call it Swift file, a web service, And the responsibility of this web service will be to fetch the data, to fetch a random fact from this URL. So that's a URL that we need. Class web service. All right. Fetch random fact. Okay. Async. Throws. And we're just going to go ahead and give you the random fact. That's it. In order to get the random fact, the first thing we will need is to create a URL. We also need to create a structure to represent the actual fact. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a fact. And I'm also going to add a network error right in this file. I mean, you can have a different file. That's perfectly fine. I mean, if you want, we can go ahead and add a new file for a fact.swift. And we can move some of the code over here, possibly this one, right here. There we go. Okay. So now we have a function called fetch random fact. It is fetching something. It's going to fetch a DTO object. Now you can use MVVM design pattern if you plan to use it. That's perfectly fine. I'm just going to fetch the fact and then display it on the screen. So there we go. We get that. We're going to check the response. If the response is good, then we can move further on. There we go. Keep in mind that when you get a response from the server, it is returning you an array of a single object. So we have to keep that in mind when we are decoding. So JSON decoder.decode an array of fact.self and then passing in the data. And now we can go ahead and call first because we are only trying to return one single fact, not two or an array of facts, right? Now, since we are making this request, we need to change some of the settings or capabilities of our application so it can make this request. So let's go to the doc facts, click the signing in capabilities, and we're going to go ahead and say outgoing connection to be true. Okay. Now we will be back to our view controller. In the view controller, I'm going to create a function, private function load fact async. This will be responsible for calling web service dot fetch random fact. Once we get the fact, we are going to go ahead and try await on it. Else, if there is no random fact, then we will just not do anything. This can also blow up. So we're going to use try catch. And if there is an error, we'll just print the error. Let's go ahead and make sure that we are organizing it correctly. Okay. Let's go ahead and build it. You can see that it's returning fact, but we're not really using the fact right now. So it's going to be the fact model, the one that we created over here. That has a property called fact that is going to give you the actual text associated with the fact. But right now, we don't really have any control, as you can see. So the first thing we need to do is create some sort of a text view control so that we can display something. So here's our text view control. Using a text view, alignment is center, draws background is false, so we don't really want any background. Is editable is false, which means that you can't really edit it, it's just for display purposes. And then we are going to set up some of our constraints. Before setting the constraints, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the view knows about the fact text view. And then we're just going to give it some sort of a size, a height, center Y, and center X. Nothing fancy. Okay. Now, view.load is going to go fire only once. We want to refresh our interface whenever the view is appearing. So we will say view will appear, super.view will appear. And now we can go ahead and call load fact. The fact is not really assigned to anything. So over here we can say text view, fact text view dot string equals to fact dot fact. This is the actual string. All right. And that pretty much should be it. Let's go ahead and check out our code in app delegate. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay. And let's go ahead and try to run it to see it in action. And there we go. That's our first dot fact. If I click it again, it's going to be sending something else. You can see that. And there we go. We have created the application. Whenever we click, the view will appear, gets called, which is going to fetch a new fact, and then it will get displayed in our application. So in this video, you'll learn how to create a menu bar application using macOS, and we use UIKit. Later on, I will show you in a different video that how you can use the same, or how you can create the same application, but using SwiftUI. So I hope you have really enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed this video and want to support my channel, then check out my courses on Udemy. I have a lot of different courses on Udemy on iOS development, Flutter, as well as web development. You can see that I just created a brand new course on Introduction to Server-Driven UI in iOS. So definitely check that one out. MVVM Design Pattern, which is one of the really best-selling courses. I have courses on macOS programming, if you want to learn more about macOS programming, about SwiftUI, and a lot more. So definitely check out the YouTube description where you will find a lot of my courses. Thank you so much.